I walked into that reunion hall with my head high, even though my hands were shaking inside my coat pockets. The chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting golden light across tables draped in white linen. Everyone was already there. Cousins I hadn't seen in years. Aunts whispering behind champagne flutes. Uncles laughing too loud near the bar. And then I saw him. My brother, Marcus. He stood near the entrance with his wife, Rachel, both of them dressed like they'd just walked off a magazine cover. He spotted me immediately, and I watched his face twist into something between a smirk and disgust. "Well, well," he said, loud enough for half the room to hear. "Look who finally decided to show up." I forced a smile. "Hi, Marcus." "Everyone," he announced, turning to the gathered family with his arms spread wide, "meet my sister, Emma. The jobless failure of the family." The room went quiet. Not silent. Just that uncomfortable hush where people don't know whether to laugh or look away. My chest tightened, but I kept my face neutral. I'd prepared for this. I knew what he thought of me. What they all thought. Rachel giggled softly beside him, covering her mouth with manicured fingers. I didn't respond. I just walked past them toward the back of the hall, where I could breathe. If you're enjoying this so far, don't forget to like the video and watch till the end. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me take you back 3 years. That's when everything fell apart. I was 26, fresh out of a design degree, and full of dreams that felt too big for the small apartment I lived in. I'd always been the creative one. The one who doodled on napkins, who saw beauty in broken things, who wanted to build something that mattered. Marcus was the opposite. Business school. Corporate job. A corner office before he turned 30. He was everything my parents wanted. Successful. Stable. Safe. And I was the disappointment. When I told them I wanted to start my own branding company, my father laughed. Actually laughed. Right there at the dinner table. "Emma," he said, shaking his head, "you can't make a living drawing pictures." Marcus leaned back in his chair, swirling his wine. "She'll come crawling back in 6 months. Trust me." My mother just sighed. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" Those words burned into me like a brand. I left that dinner table with tears streaming down my face and a promise to myself, I would prove them all wrong. But it didn't happen overnight. The first year was brutal. I worked freelance gigs that barely paid rent. I lived on instant noodles and black coffee. I pitched to clients who never called back. I redesigned my portfolio 17 times. Marcus would call every few months, always with the same condescending tone. "Still playing artist, Emma? You know there's a receptionist position at my firm." I could put in a word. I'd hang up without answering. By year 2, I was surviving, not thriving. A few small clients. Enough to keep the lights on. But nothing big. Nothing that would make them see me differently. Then I met David. He was a startup founder looking for a brand identity. Young, ambitious, and willing to take a chance on someone hungry. We clicked immediately. I poured everything into his project. Late nights. Endless revisions. A logo that told a story. When he launched, his company exploded. Within 6 months, he was on magazine covers. His brand was everywhere. And my logo was attached to every single piece of it. He called me one night, breathless with excitement. "Emma, we just got acquired. $12 million. And I'm giving you credit." Publicly. My phone started ringing. Big clients. Corporate contracts. People who'd ignored my emails were suddenly offering me retainers. I hired a team. Rented an office. Built something real. But I didn't tell my family. Not yet. I wanted them to see it themselves. To realize what I'd become without their approval. Without their belief. That's why I came to this reunion. Not for Marcus. Not for my parents. For me. I found a seat near the back, next to Aunt Linda, who smiled warmly and asked how I was doing. I gave her the short version. Good. Really good. She squeezed my hand. I always believed in you, sweetheart. It was a small comfort in a room that felt hostile. Marcus took the stage a few minutes later. The reunion had a whole program planned. Speeches. A slideshow. Awards for the most successful family members. Guess who was first on that list? Thank you all for coming, Marcus began, microphone in hand, grinning like a politician. It's been an incredible year for me and Rachel. Promotions. New house. We're even expecting our first child. The room erupted in applause. I clapped too, even though my stomach twisted. But tonight isn't just about me, he continued. It's about family. And I think it's important we celebrate everyone. Even those of us who are still finding their way. His eyes landed on me. My sister, Emma, for example. She's been trying really hard. And I think we should all give her a round of encouragement. The applause that followed was polite. Pitying. I wanted to disappear. But then something happened. The projector behind Marcus flickered. The slideshow froze mid-image. A tech guy scrambled to fix it, muttering apologies. Marcus laughed it off. Technology, right? But the screen didn't go black. Instead, it flashed. Once. Twice. And then it displayed something that made my heart stop. My logo. The one I'd designed for David's company. But not just that. It cycled through a dozen other logos. Brands I'd worked with over the past year. Companies everyone in that room would recognize. Fashion labels. Tech startups. A major restaurant chain. All of them bearing my signature design style. And at the bottom of the screen, in bold letters, designed by Emma Clark, Clark Branding CO. The room went silent. Not uncomfortable this time. Dead silent. Marcus turned to look at the screen, his face draining of color. What is this? I stood up slowly, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. That, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos inside me, is my work. Every head in the room turned toward me. My mother's mouth fell open. My father stared like he was seeing me for the first time. Cousins who'd barely acknowledged me earlier were leaning forward in their seats. Marcus stammered. Emma, what the how? Clark Branding Company, I said, louder now. I started it 3 years ago. The same year you called me jobless. The projector continued cycling through my portfolio. Each logo a testament to the late nights. The rejection. The refusal to give up. Rachel grabbed Marcus's arm, whispering something I couldn't hear. But Marcus just stood there, frozen. Aunt Linda stood beside me, beaming. I knew it, she whispered. I knew you'd do something incredible. The tech guy finally managed to turn off the projector, but the damage was done. Everyone knew now. Not just that I had a job. That I had built something. Something bigger than any of them had imagined. Marcus stepped down from the stage, his face red. He walked straight toward me, and for a moment I thought he might yell. But he didn't. He just stood there, staring at me like I was a stranger. "You didn't tell us," he finally said. "You didn't ask," I replied. The rest of the reunion was a blur. People I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly wanted to talk. They asked about my company. My clients. How I'd done it. I answered politely, but my mind was elsewhere. On the years of silence. The years of doubt. The years I'd spent proving myself to people who never believed I could. When the night finally ended, I walked out into the cool air, my coat pulled tight around me. Marcus caught up with me in the parking lot. "Emma, wait." I turned. He looked smaller somehow. Less sure of himself. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "You didn't care," I corrected. He flinched. We stood there in the silence, the space between us filled with 3 years of unspoken words. "I'm sorry," he finally said. It wasn't enough. But it was a start. I got in my car and drove away, leaving the reunion and everything it represented behind me. As I drove through the city, the lights blurring past my windows, I realized something. I didn't need their approval anymore. I'd spent so long chasing it, trying to prove I was enough. But I already was. The girl who'd been called a failure had built an empire out of sheer will and refusal to quit. And that was more than enough. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the silence for a moment, letting the weight of the night settle over me. Then I smiled. Because tomorrow, I had a meeting with a client who wanted to rebrand their entire company. And the day after that, another one. The work didn't stop. The hustle didn't end. But now, I didn't feel like I was running from something. I was running toward it. Toward the future I'd built with my own hands. And no one could take that from me. Not Marcus. Not my parents. Not anyone. The days after the reunion were strange. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Text messages. Calls. Emails from family members I hadn't heard from in years. Some were congratulatory. Others were awkward. A few were desperate, suddenly interested in reconnecting now that I had something they could benefit from. I ignored most of them. But my mother called. I stared at her name on the screen for a long time before answering. "Emma," she said softly. "Can we talk?" We met at a coffee shop near my old neighborhood. The same place I used to come when I was broke, nursing a single cup for hours while I worked on my laptop. She looked older than I remembered. Tired. We sat across from each other in silence for a moment, the steam from our cups rising between us. "I'm proud of you," she said finally. I didn't know how to respond to that. Part of me wanted to believe her. Another part wanted to ask where that pride was 3 years ago. "I know we didn't support you," she continued. "Your father and I, we were scared. We didn't understand what you were doing. And we handled it wrong." I stirred my coffee, watching the cream swirl. "You told me I'd fail." "I know." Her voice cracked. "And I'm sorry." The apology hung in the air between us. "I'm not looking for your approval anymore, Mom," I said quietly. I needed it back then. But now, I don't. She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I understand." We finished our coffee in silence, and when we left, she hugged me. It felt strange and familiar all at once. "I hope you'll let me be part of your life again," she whispered. "Even if I don't deserve it." I didn't make any promises. But I didn't say no either. Work consumed me over the next few months. My company grew faster than I could have imagined. We moved into a bigger office. I hired more designers. We landed contracts with brands I used to dream about working with. But Marcus stayed silent. No calls. No texts. Nothing. Part of me expected him to reach out. To try to rebuild what we'd lost. But he didn't. Until one day, 6 months after the reunion, he showed up at my office. My assistant buzzed me. "Emma, there's someone here to see you. He says he's your brother." I hesitated. Then nodded. "Send him in." Marcus walked into my office, and I barely recognized him. He looked exhausted. His suit was wrinkled. His hair messier than I'd ever seen it. "Emma," he said, standing awkwardly near the door. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Sit." He did. We sat in silence for a long moment, and I realized he didn't know how to start. "Why are you here, Marcus?" I asked. He rubbed his face. "I lost my job." I blinked. "What?" "3 months ago. They restructured. Let go of half the management team. I've been applying everywhere, but nothing." I leaned back in my chair, processing. "I'm sorry." He laughed bitterly. "Are you?" I met his eyes. "I don't wish failure on you, Marcus. Even after everything." He looked down at his hands. "I've been thinking about that night. The reunion. What I said to you. You called me jobless." "I know." His voice was barely above a whisper. "I was cruel. And I was wrong." I waited. "I was jealous," he continued. "I always have been. You were the creative one. The one everyone loved. And I was just the practical one. The boring one. I built my whole identity around being successful because I didn't know who I was without it." I didn't interrupt. I just listened. "And when you started your company, part of me wanted you to fail. Because if you succeeded, it meant I wasn't special anymore." He looked up at me, eyes red. "I'm so sorry, Emma. For everything." The apology felt heavier than my mother's. More raw. "I don't know if you can forgive me," he said. But I needed to say it. I took a breath. "I'm not going to pretend the last few years didn't hurt, Marcus. They did. A lot." He nodded. "But I also know what it's like to feel like you're not enough. To tie your entire worth to your work." I paused. "And I know what it's like to lose everything and have to rebuild." He waited. "I forgive you," I said softly. "But that doesn't mean things go back to the way they were. You have to earn that." "I will," he said quickly. "I promise." I studied him for a moment. Then I made a decision. "I'm hiring for a project manager," I said. "It's not glamorous. You'd be starting from the bottom. But if you're serious about rebuilding, I can offer you a chance." His eyes widened. "Emma, I can't ask you to, you're not asking. I'm offering." He looked like he might cry. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," I said. "You'll be working for me. And I'm a tough boss." He laughed, a real laugh, and for the first time in years, I saw my brother again. Not the arrogant, condescending version. The real one. The one I used to look up to before everything got complicated. "I won't let you down," he said. "I know," I replied. Marcus started the following Monday. True to my word, I didn't give him any special treatment. He worked late hours. Handled grunt work. Took orders from people younger than him. And he never complained. Slowly, over the months, we rebuilt our relationship. Not as it was before, but something new. Something healthier. He learned humility. I learned forgiveness. And somewhere in the process, we became siblings again. 1 year after the reunion, my company celebrated its biggest milestone yet. We'd been featured in a major business magazine. Our revenue had tripled. We'd expanded into international markets. I threw a party at the office for my team. Everyone who'd believed in me. Everyone who'd worked tirelessly to make this dream a reality. Marcus was there, laughing with the designers, helping set up chairs. My parents came too. They looked around the office with something like awe. "You did this," my father said, his voice thick with emotion. "You really did it." I nodded. I did. He pulled me into a hug, and for the first time in years, it didn't feel forced. As the party went on, I stepped outside onto the balcony, looking out at the city lights. Aunt Linda joined me, a glass of champagne in her hand. "I always knew you'd do it," she said. I smiled. "You were the only one." "That's not true anymore," she replied, nodding toward the party inside. "Look at them. They all believe in you now." I turned to look. My team. My family. Even Marcus, who was laughing at something one of the designers said. "But the most important person who believes in you," Aunt Linda continued, "is you." She was right. I'd spent so many years fighting for their approval. Trying to prove I was worthy. But the real battle had always been internal. Believing in myself when no one else did. Refusing to quit when everything told me to. Building something not because I needed to prove them wrong, but because I needed to prove myself right. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone in my office. The walls were covered with framed logos. Projects I was proud of. Brands I'd helped build. But the thing I was most proud of wasn't on the walls. It was the girl who'd walked out of that family dinner 3 years ago, broken and doubted, and decided to build an empire anyway. The girl who'd been called jobless and turned it into fuel. The girl who'd stood in that reunion hall and watched her logo light up the screen, not with arrogance, but with quiet vindication. I'd won. Not because I'd humiliated Marcus or proven my parents wrong. But because I'd become someone I was proud of. Someone who didn't need their validation. Someone who'd learned that the only approval that mattered was my own. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes, and smiled. The journey had been brutal. Lonely. Exhausting. But it had been mine. And I wouldn't change a single second of it. The months continued to roll by, and the success kept building. But something shifted inside me. It wasn't about the money anymore, or the recognition, or even the vindication. It was about the work itself. I loved what I did. I loved the way a simple design could tell a story. How a brand could make someone feel seen. How creativity could change a business's entire trajectory. That passion had carried me through the darkest times. And now, it was what kept me grounded when everything else felt overwhelming. One afternoon, I got an email that stopped me in my tracks. It was from a non-profit organization. They worked with young women from underprivileged backgrounds, helping them find careers in creative fields. They wanted to know if I'd be interested in speaking at their annual conference. I stared at the email for a long time. 3 years ago, I'd been in their shoes. Broke. Uncertain. Doubting whether I'd ever make it. I wrote back immediately, yes. The conference was held in a small community center downtown. Nothing fancy. Folding chairs and a makeshift stage. But the energy in that room was electric. Young women filled every seat. Some looked hopeful. Others looked scared. All of them looked hungry for something more. I stood at the podium, looking out at their faces, and I saw myself. My name is Emma Clark, I began. And 3 years ago, my brother called me a jobless failure in front of my entire family. The room was silent. He wasn't entirely wrong, I continued. I didn't have a job. I didn't have money. I didn't have anyone who believed in me except myself. And some days, even that was shaky. A few people nodded. But I had something else. I had a dream. And I had the audacity to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could make it real. I told them my story. Not the polished, highlight reel version. The real one. The failures. The rejections. The nights I cried myself to sleep wondering if I was delusional for even trying. But also the small victories. The first client who took a chance on me. The moment I saw my work in the wild for the first time. The day I hired my first employee. I'm not standing here to tell you it's easy, I said. Because it's not. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. But if you have something inside you that refuses to die, something that keeps whispering try again even when everything else is screaming quit, then you owe it to yourself to listen. When I finished, the applause was deafening. Afterwards, a young woman approached me. She couldn't have been more than 20. She clutched a worn portfolio against her chest. Can I show you my work? She asked nervously. I smiled. Of course. Her designs were raw. Unpolished. But there was something there. A spark. You're talented, I told her. Her eyes welled up. Really? Really? Keep going. Don't stop. She nodded, clutching my business card like it was made of gold. As I drove home that night, I realized something. That moment, that simple encouragement, might change her life. The same way one person believing in me had changed mine. Success wasn't just about what I built for myself. It was about what I could give back. I started mentoring young designers. Offering free portfolio reviews. Speaking at events whenever I could. Marcus noticed. You're busier than ever, he said one day over lunch. I am, I agreed. But it's a different kind of busy. A better kind. He smiled. You're happy. I paused. I am. I'm proud of you, he said. And I don't just mean the company. I mean you. The person you've become. Coming from Marcus, those words meant more than I expected. Thanks, I said softly. We'd come a long way. Both of us. 2 years after the reunion, I received an invitation. Another family gathering. My first instinct was to decline. But then I thought about it. I wasn't the same person who'd walked into that hall 2 years ago. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. I could show up simply as myself. So I went. This time, the atmosphere was different. People greeted me warmly. Genuinely. They asked about my work with real interest, not forced politeness. Marcus was there with Rachel and their daughter, now a year old. He introduced me as my incredibly talented sister. Not Jobless. Not the failure. Just his sister. My parents sat with me for most of the evening. We talked about the company. About life. About the future. "We were wrong about you," my father said quietly. "And I'm sorry it took us so long to see it." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I know. No dramatic confrontations. No big speeches. Just quiet acceptance." And that was enough. Near the end of the night, they announced awards again. Most successful family member still existed, apparently. But this time, when they called my name, it didn't feel like a trap. It felt like recognition. I stood at the podium, looking out at the same faces that had watched me be humiliated 2 years ago. "Thank you," I said simply. "But I want to say something." The room quieted. Success isn't just about money or titles or recognition. It's about becoming someone you're proud of. Someone who doesn't give up when things get hard. Someone who helps others along the way. I looked at Marcus, who smiled. 2 years ago, I stood in this hall feeling like I had to prove something. But the truth is, the only person I ever needed to prove anything to was myself. I paused. And I did. The applause was thunderous. But this time, I didn't need it. I already knew my worth. Months turned into years. The company kept growing. We opened offices in 3 more cities. I published a book about branding and entrepreneurship. I was invited to speak at conferences around the world. But the thing that brought me the most joy was watching my team grow. The designers I'd mentored became creative directors. The project managers became partners. Even Marcus, who'd started at the bottom, worked his way up to leading his own department. He proved himself not through entitlement, but through effort. And I respected him for it. One evening, I sat in my office after everyone had gone home. The city lights twinkled below. The office was quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning. I thought about the girl I'd been. The one who'd sat in a tiny apartment, crying over rejection emails, wondering if she was crazy for even trying. I wished I could go back and tell her, "You're going to make it. It's going to hurt. It's going to take longer than you think. But you're going to make it. And when you do, it'll be better than anything you imagined." My phone buzzed. A text from Aunt Linda. "Saw your interview on that podcast. You were brilliant. So proud of you." I smiled and texted back, "Thank you for always believing in me." Her response came quickly, "I didn't make you successful, sweetheart. You did that all on your own. I just had the privilege of watching." I set my phone down and stared out at the city. 3 years ago, I'd walked into a reunion hall expecting judgment. And I'd gotten it. But I'd also gotten something else. Proof that I didn't need their approval. Proof that I could build something from nothing. Proof that the girl they'd written off was stronger than any of them knew. The projector glitch that night hadn't just revealed my logo to the room. It had revealed who I really was. Not the failure they'd labeled me, but the fighter I'd always been. And that revelation hadn't just changed how they saw me. It had changed how I saw myself. I stood up from my desk and walked to the window. My reflection stared back at me, framed by the city lights. I looked different now. Older. More confident. But also softer. More at peace. I'd spent so long fighting. Fighting for recognition. Fighting against doubt. Fighting to prove I wasn't what they said I was. But I wasn't fighting anymore. I was building. And that made all the difference. The story could have ended there. With the success. The redemption. The vindication. But life doesn't work that way. Because even after you've proven yourself, the doubts don't completely disappear. They just get quieter. Some mornings, I'd still wake up and wonder if I deserved all of this. If I'd just gotten lucky. If it could all disappear as quickly as it came. But then I'd go to the office and see my team working on projects that mattered. I'd get emails from young designers telling me I'd inspired them to keep going. I'd look at the portfolio of work we'd created and remember, this is real. I built this. Not luck. Not chance. Me. And no one could take that away. The last time I saw Marcus, we met for dinner at a restaurant downtown. Just the two of us. He looked good. Healthier. Happier. I got a job offer, he said, halfway through the meal. I looked up. Yeah? Big firm. Great salary. They want me to start in a month. I set down my fork. That's amazing, Marcus. He nodded, but there was hesitation in his eyes. What? I asked. I'm not sure I want to take it. I raised an eyebrow. Why not? He leaned back in his chair. Because for the first time in my life, I actually love what I'm doing. Working at your company, it's different. It's not just about the money or the title. It's about creating something that matters. I smiled. You sound like me 3 years ago. He laughed. I know. It's weird. So what are you going to do? He met my eyes. I want to stay. If you'll have me. I didn't hesitate. Of course. Relief washed over his face. Thank you. But Marcus, I said, leaning forward, you have to promise me something. Anything. Stop defining yourself by what other people think. Do this because you love it. Not because you're trying to prove something. He nodded slowly. I will. We finished dinner, and as we walked out into the cool night air, he stopped. Emma? I turned. I'm really sorry. For everything. I know I've said it before, but I need you to know. I mean it. I stepped closer and hugged him. I know. We stood there for a moment, two siblings who'd been through hell and somehow found their way back to each other. When we pulled apart, he smiled. You're incredible, you know that? I smiled back. So are you. And I meant it. The years continued to unfold. The company thrived. My personal life found balance. I even started dating again, something I'd neglected for years. But the thing I was most proud of wasn't the revenue numbers or the awards or the recognition. It was the person I'd become. Someone who didn't need external validation. Someone who could forgive. Someone who could lead with empathy and strength. The girl who'd been called jobless had become a woman who created jobs. The girl who'd been labeled a failure had become a woman who taught others how to succeed. And the girl who'd walked into that reunion hall 3 years ago, terrified and humiliated, had become a woman who walked through life with her head held high. Not because she had something to prove, but because she'd already proven it. To the one person who mattered most. Herself. I'll never forget that night. The projector flickering. The logo appearing on the screen. The silence that followed. It was the moment everything changed. But not because they finally saw me. Because I finally saw myself. And I realized I'd been enough all along. The end.